Release or not, it's about damn time we talk about Sasha Banks. Hello guys, one more time and welcome to Ring Royalty. My name is Alexis, as you already know, and once again the Rise and Fall series continues, this time around with Sasha Banks, the boss, the blueprint, the standard. Is she actually released from WWE? Have we seen the last of Sasha Banks in the grandest sports entertainment company in the world? I still don't believe the reports, as Sasha Banks or WWE haven't really confirmed anything, but all of this drama is what's giving me the inspiration to do the rise and fall of the boss, Sasha Banks. Mercedes Bernardo, aka Sasha Banks, signed with WWE in 2012 and got her first television match, or in this case network special match, against the NXT Women's Champion Paige at the time in a losing effort. However, her first singles victory would come only a month later, defeating established diva of the main roster, Alicia Fox. For probably the first 5 months of her career, she was such a generic babyface. She even had crystal theme songs, that's how generic her personality and character was, until she started her alliance with Summer Rae, saying how she has rage and she should unleash it. And that's how Sasha Banks turned heel after losing a match against Paige, attacking the champion viciously and starting the boss character. Finally a character for our girl, and not only that, but one of the most important characters coming from the NXT Women's Division in history. In September 2013, Sasha and Summer will be joined by Charlotte in their stable, calling themselves the BFFs, Beautiful Fierce Females. That was smart. Since there was no much to accomplish for them as a team, the rest of 2013 and most of 2014, they spent their time facing random baby faces in both singles and tag team matches. We're talking about the likes of Emma, Becky Lynch, Bayley, Natalya, etc, etc, etc. I mean, the matches were good, don't get me wrong, the quality of the matches was always good in NXT, but there was nothing really that remarkable. In 2014 though, Summer Rae was officially called up to the main roster, so she was gone from the NXT division, and Charlotte Flair won a tournament after Paige was gone too, to become the NXT Women's Champion. This would be later important because Sasha and Charlotte would end up their alliance and start a feud, because Sasha wanted to seek the NXT Women's Championship for herself. And it makes a lot of sense because she's the boss, but she's not the champion. And now she wants to be both. During her feud with Charlotte, she would join forces with newcomer Becky Lynch, who turned heel, forming Team Bay. I'm not sure what Bay stands for, but it still sounds really cool. And Banks would get multiple single title matches against Charlotte. The most relevant one happened at NXT TakeOver Revolution. That was such a great match. There were so many great spots. Loved the ending with Sasha Banks receiving the natural selection from the top rope. It was a devastating ending, and the crowd really started to get into women's wrestling after this match. That's how Charlotte and Sasha start to revolutionize, I mean no pun intended, NXT Revolution, what women's wrestling was all about, considering they had a match of over 10 minutes, while on the main roster, girls would get lucky to even get a 5-minute match on the card. You see the difference? Sasha and Charlotte did that. Finally, Sasha would win the NXT Women's Championship, and it would happen on February 2015 in the iconic 4-horsewomen Fatal 4-Way match at NXT TakeOver Rival. This has to be one of the most iconic matches in women's wrestling history in NXT. I mean, they did absolutely everything they could to keep the audience interested. They were so into it, all of them had enough time to shine, and it was so unexpected that Sasha, after failing many different times to capture that title, she managed to pin Charlotte Flair, the woman who defeated her many times for the title, and won the most coveted spot in the NXT Women's Division. She was the new NXT Champion. For me, it was very clever to put the title on Sasha at this point for 3 things. First of all, she has a wide moveset, and she has proved that in her matches with Charlotte Flair. Second of all, she's an amazing seller. She can make a suplex look devastating. And third of all, she has a great character with charisma. She was super over with the crowd despite being a heel, and the WWE Universe gave her a standing ovation after the Fatal 4-Way match and winning the championship despite being the villain. So, I mean, that speaks wonders to me. So far, everything in Sasha Banks' career is just right. We're going up, 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 and she's delivering night in and night out. Her NXT Women's Championship reign didn't disappoint either. She held it for 192 days and she had 5 title defenses. The 3 most memorable ones, at least to me, are first the iconic instant classic between her and Becky Lynch at the NXT TakeOver Unstoppable. That match was fantastic, it was very vicious, it was the first time we saw Becky with a new look, the orange hair that we now love, and also both of them looked like their arms were ripped off their bodies by the end of the match. Such a huge banger. Then her title defense against Charlotte in July in NXT TV, that was another great one and it was the last battle they had in NXT, such a memorable match as well. And the iconic and super popular Bayley against Sasha Banks at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. I mean, that match is just something else, it's in another level. It has to be one of the greatest women's matches in history, period. And there is nobody that can discuss that. Both of them deliver an A show, the entrances were fantastic, the in-ring work was amazing, the storytelling was there, the contrast of the in-ring styles and characters meshed so well to create a magical moment. There were so many huge spots in the match, especially that reverse Frankensteiner by Bayley when it looked like Sasha just broke her neck. Chef's kiss. And that's how Sasha Banks actually lost the championship. But being honest, there were no winners or losers here. Everybody won. This match is definitely must see. If you haven't seen it, you have to do it. And just when we thought we wouldn't see Sasha Banks again in an NXT ring, she said, "Girl, I'm not done yet," and she invoked her rematch clause, which happened in the main event of NXT TakeOver Respect in the first ever 30-minute Iron Women match. Fun fact, this is also the first time women headline a WWE Network special, TakeOver. Once again, it was a super spotty match, fantastic from beginning to end. Sasha Banks had this monster heel moment that I just love and treasure with all my heart. And that's when she took Izzy's bow and started mocking her while she was crying. The crowd was in awe. We haven't seen this level of heelness in a while, and Sasha Banks brought it back. I mean, I swear, NXT heel Sasha Banks is in another level as well. She was top notch. In this match, Sasha beat Bayley twice, but she was beaten by her thrice, losing her rematch and obviously not recapturing the NXT Women's Championship, sending her straight to the main roster for good. It was a great way to go out. Honestly, this has to be one of the best send-offs we have seen in NXT history, especially for women. So congratulations for Sasha. So far, I have absolutely nothing to critique in her career in WWE. Some side notes that I want to point out, and all of them are from the NXT TakeOver Brooklyn match against Bayley. There are 3 things. First, it was highly praised by the critics, which is something not that common, at least in women's wrestling. Second of all, it won NXT Match of the Year in 2015. And the third one, it is considered by many the greatest women's match in wrestling history. Well, I will let you judge that and tell me in the comments, do you think this is the greatest women's match ever or not? And for all the previously mentioned, there is just one way that I can sum up Sasha's NXT run, and that's a star was born. The boss was ready for the main roster for sure. Her main roster debut happened on July 13, 2015, while she was still the NXT Women's Champion in the iconic arrival of the NXT Women. She joined forces with Naomi and Tamina forming Team Bad, Beautiful and Dangerous, regardless of her being a part of the 3 teams that basically started the Divas Revolution in this segment. I think they were the team with less exposure out of the 3, at least from my point of view. And this segment led to a triple threat match at the next pay-per-view, which was Battleground, where we saw Sasha Banks from Team Bad facing Charlotte from Team PCB and facing Brie Bella from Team Bella. We had already seen her great chemistry with Charlotte from the NXT matches, but she also had very nice chemistry with Brie, making a very interesting triple threat match. And I think the flow was good, there were some nice spots, but in this case, unfortunately, we will start seeing who WWE wanted to push as the star of the Divas Revolution, and Charlotte would be the one submitting Brie Bella with a figure 8. Sasha Banks didn't win, but she didn't lose. At least that's something. Now, in the next few months, Team Bad got involved in many different tag teams and singles matches against members of the other teams randomly without any purpose, and I just don't understand why Sasha was so over, even with the main roster crowd, but she went nowhere. She defeated Nikki Bella, the Divas Champion, in a non-title match. She defeated Paige twice, probably the one with most accolades from the whole Divas Revolution era. and the victories got her nowhere. What the hell happened there? I just don't understand. The rest of 2015 she would spend her time teaming up with Naomi and Tamina or by herself defeating random baby faces in pointless tag team and singles matches in both Raw and SmackDown. The only good thing that came out of this is that she began a winning streak. The winning streak mostly consisted that she would never be pinned or submitted in either Raw or SmackDown. She was undefeated technically since her debut, so that was nice. 2015 at least gave her that. Her last match of the year happened against Becky Lynch at the TLC pre-show, where she defeated the Irish-born superstar in a very competitive match, but then she would later take a hiatus of a month and we wouldn't see her on TV again. Sasha's return happened at the Royal Rumble 2016 when she would attack both Becky and Charlotte after their Divas Championship match, stating that she was back for the gold. She wanted to become champion on the main roster just like she did in NXT, and she was ready to take both of them out of the equation. However, these would go nowhere for a while. Before getting a title shot or anything with Charlotte storyline wise, Sasha began a feud with former Team Bad partners Naomi and Tamina when Sasha decided she wanted to do things on her own and she didn't need a stable anymore. After getting attacked by them and saved by Becky Lynch, Sasha would officially turn babyface and would team with Becky to defeat Naomi and Tamina in a tag team match at Fastlane. And the rest of the road for WrestleMania was the historic triple threat match between Charlotte, Sasha, and Becky. And the match delivered. Once again, chef's kiss. For me, this triple threat has to be the most epic and memorable women's match at WrestleMania history because it is the one that solidified the change between the Divas era and the women's evolution. Another important thing that happened in this WrestleMania is that the Divas Championship was retired and replaced by the Women's Championship, once again giving the prestige to the women's locker room. And Sasha Banks got a fantastic entrance, crowd was so into her. Crowd was cheering for her because she was the favorite coming into this match. Charlotte already had a lengthy title reign as Divas Champion, so everybody thought either Becky or Sasha were winning this match. And it didn't happen. Although all of them had enough time to showcase their abilities and there were so many memorable spots like Charlotte moonsault to the outside, Sasha Banks dive to the outside, Becky Lynch taking out Ric Flair, that amazing frog splash breaking the figure 4, and I could continue mentioning many different great spots. For a moment it looked like Sasha was winning when she locked in the bank statement on Becky, then Charlotte whistled her way back into the ring, threw her out and locked in the figure 8. While Becky was fighting the figure 8, Sasha was trying to get back in the ring, but Ric Flair would hold her feet and would not let her free. That's how Becky Lynch tapped out and Charlotte Flair became the first ever women's champion. And this is the first down of Sasha's career. Sasha must have won this match. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. She was the underdog babyface who have never been a champion. Charlotte already had a lengthy title reign. People were rooting for Sasha. It was the WrestleMania debut of everybody, so I wouldn't see why Charlotte needed to continue as champion. And this is how we start the huge losing streak Sasha Banks had at WrestleMania. You will see what I'm talking about as the video progresses, but it makes me mad that she didn't win the Women's Championship here. The Raw after WrestleMania, Sasha Banks would show up and defeat Summer Rae in a singles match, and they would take another hiatus, this time of 2 months. This hiatus will become something regular, as you will see. And this time she would come back to defend Paige from Dana Brooke, Charlotte's protege, and the Women's Champion Charlotte, which led to a tag team match at the Battleground pay-per-view. However, Paige would get injured and she wouldn't be able to participate in the match, so it was Dana Brooke and Charlotte against Sasha and a mystery partner. And who that was? Bayley. The one she had iconic matches the previous year with is now a tag team partner of hers, and both of them defeated Dana Brooke and Charlotte at the pay-per-view. Everybody erupted, they were super happy, and that's how finally Sasha Banks would be seeking the Women's Championship against Charlotte in a one-on-one rivalry. We have been waiting since the Royal Rumble, so it was about damn time. In July, during the first Raw episode after the brand split, Sasha Banks defeated Charlotte Flair in the main event of the show to win her first Raw Women's Championship. Finally, after a year of her debut, Sasha is becoming the champion. It was well deserved. The crowd was so happy for her. Everybody was cheering. It happened in a random episode of Raw. However, they made it special because they were promoting how this was the first women's one-on-one main event on Raw since Trish and Lita back in 2004. So that's a huge deal. And I am so happy that Sasha Banks got the opportunity to perform in a huge window like this. It was also a great and memorable match. It is a 4-star rating match for many different sources, so I mean, I wouldn't critique anything of it. They gave us a pay-per-view quality match. But just when we thought everything was back on track in Sasha's career, it was not. From August to December 2016, Sasha and Charlotte would both play hot potato with the Raw Women's Championship, winning it back and forth, and it actually got to a point where it was ridiculous. The most stressful thing about it is that Sasha could never actually manage to win the championship matches at the pay-per-views. She could only win it on Raw. During this time, Sasha Banks became a 3-time Raw Women's Champion, defeating Charlotte in 3 consecutive Raw main event matches between them, and she lost them at the next pay-per-view all of the times. The 3 most memorable matches of this rivalry were the Hell in a Cell one at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, first time ever women step into the demonic structures, so that was huge, but Sasha Banks lost. Then the Falls Count Anywhere match, the main event at Raw in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Sasha won the title for the 3rd time and got props from the Nature Boy, Charlotte's father. And then the last one happened at Roadblock, the End of the Line pay-per-view in December, in the first ever Iron Women match on the main roster. And once again, Sasha lost the match, and that would officially lead her to lose the feud. Now the worst part is here. Out of the 3 title reigns that she had during these 4 months, none of them even lasted 30 days. So she was champion for about 21 days each time and had no title defenses. That's how we started another curse with Sasha Banks, and is the no being able to defend a singles championship ever. I am so annoyed with these losing streaks of hers. Personally, this is a huge down because it felt like Sasha Banks was just there to elevate Charlotte. She was the one undefeated in all the pay-per-views. She was the one winning most of the first ever matches. So I'm like, okay, Sasha Banks was just there to play second filler to Charlotte. It is quite sad, but now that you look at it in hindsight, it could be seen that way. As the loser at Roadblock wouldn't be able to cash in a rematch, Sasha later began a small feud against Nia Jax, and they had 2 pay-per-view matches. The first one happened at the pre-show of the Royal Rumble 2017, where Nia Jax demolished Sasha Banks easily, and in the rematch at the Fastlane pay-per-view, Sasha Banks would score the victory, cheating just a little bit holding on to the ropes, but defeating the Samoan native wrestler. That was a huge victory. Nobody really expected Nia to be defeated that way. Also in February, Sasha would help her best friend Bayley to win the Raw Women's Championship from Charlotte in another main event of Raw. And this was huge because now Sasha could chase the Raw Women's Championship since Charlotte was not the champion anymore. The boss is clever. All the stories were combined, and that's how at WrestleMania 33 we got a Fatal 4-Way elimination match for the Raw Women's Championship between Bayley, the defending champion, against Charlotte, the former champion, the boss Sasha Banks, and Nia Jax. Once again, Sasha got an amazing showing, a great entrance, but lost the match because it's WrestleMania, and you know what that means for Sasha. The Raw after WrestleMania that year, we saw Sasha Banks call out Bayley and challenge her to a singles match for the Raw Women's Championship. And when we thought a rerun of her NXT feud would come, and I was super excited, Alexa Bliss was drafted to Raw and Sasha was sent to the back of the line. Alexa and Bayley feud for a couple months, which meant that Sasha Banks had no business in the Raw Women's division. However, out of nowhere, she won the first ever women's gauntlet match in WWE to earn a title shot against Alexa Bliss at the Great Balls of Fire. Is that the name? I mean, what was even that pay-per-view? It didn't even last a year. But whatever. On the Great Balls of Fire pay-per-view for the Raw Women's Championship. Unfortunately, the match would end by countout, so Sasha would technically win, but wouldn't be able to get the championship. And then she destroyed Alexa Bliss with that meteora from the top of the announcer's table. That looks sick. And since July wasn't a good month for Sasha Banks to win the championship, she said, okay, I'm invoking my rematch in August at SummerSlam, the biggest party of the summer. And that's how Sasha Banks, after a very competitive match, won her 4th Raw Women's Championship. That was huge. Finally, it happened in a pay-per-view. And I swear that for 1 second, I was clueless enough to believe that this would be the first time we would get a real title reign from Sasha Banks, considering that Charlotte was not the one in front of her in the rivalry. And I was wrong again. Can you believe it? She dropped the title only 8 days later in the main event of Monday Night Raw against the former champion Alexa Bliss. Can you see how mad I am just remembering this? The no title defense curse continues, and the embarrassment in Sasha's career continues as well. This has to be another down. Not to be shady, but I mean, at least Charlotte could match Sasha in the ring, but Alexa was nowhere near Sasha in ring-wise, so I just don't understand what happened there. Back then, WWE never really trusted Sasha with the title. They considered that she was good chasing the title, but apparently not as a champion. Her last Raw Women's Championship match for a while happened in a rematch because she was the former champion, but somehow her rematch was transformed into a fatal 5-way match at the No Mercy pay-per-view. Another great match though. I mean, don't get me wrong, the match quality of these title matches are great, but it's just that Sasha keeps losing and losing, and she's losing credibility as well. So unfortunate that this happened, but I mean, that's what we got. After No Mercy, Bayley and Sasha start to team up regularly, and by the end of the year, they were joined by Mickie James facing Absolution, the newly formed tag team consisting of the returning Paige alongside NXT call-ups Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. And this rivalry was completely pointless. They were fighting for nothing for weeks, and I mean weeks. The same 3-on-3 tag team matches, sometimes with variations, maybe 2-on-2, but it felt pointless. Not even the champion was involved in the rivalry, so what was the point in all of this? Paige getting injured by Sasha during a live event caught this rivalry right there. I'm not gonna talk about that incident because a lot of people get really intense about it. But in 2018, the things would brighten up for Sasha Banks. In January, she would participate in the first ever all-women's Royal Rumble match, being the first entry and lasting 54 minutes in the match, having great moments and interactions with legends like Vicky Guerrero, Michelle McCool, and Trish Stratus. Then in February, she was also one of the last 2 women in the first ever all-women's Elimination Chamber match for the Raw Women's Championship. And in April at Wrestlemania, she participated in the inaugural Women's Battle Royal at Wrestlemania. All of those things were great, and during all these 4 historic months, they were planting seeds for a Sasha and Bayley feud and split up. Let me tell you why. At the Royal Rumble, Sasha out of nowhere eliminated Bayley and stated that she is the boss. That's why she is the boss. Then at the Elimination Chamber, she betrayed Bayley in that chamber pot spot. That was nice, and they start brawling. And at the WrestleMania Battle Royal, Sasha tried to trick Bayley, but Bayley would end up eliminating her this time around from the match. So once again, all things were leading up to this iconic rerun of NXT, which we were craving for, the feud between Sasha and Bayley, and we wouldn't really get it. For the next 4 months, they were arguing and brawling, fighting every chance they got, and for some reason management still wanted them to work together as a team. They were obligated to, which made absolutely no sense, and even they were sent to couples therapy, which was supposed to be funny, but for me it was ridiculous. I never laughed in any of those segments. They tried to recreate the Daniel Bryan Kane storyline, but this time around it just didn't work. Throughout this dreadful storyline, in June, Sasha Banks won another gauntlet match, this time to qualify for the Money in the Bank ladder match. Up to this day, the 2018 Women's Money in the Bank ladder match is the best one ever, and it is graded with over 4 stars. All of the girls there threw a banger, and Sasha had chemistry with absolutely all of the participants. She delivered like she always does. Finally, in July, after so many animosity, Sasha and Bayley randomly made up, and that's how they began to call themselves the Boss and Hawk Connection. It would be short-lived though, because after a couple of matches, Sasha Banks took another hiatus, the 3rd time already, can you believe it? And this time it was 3-month hiatus. Luckily, she came back just in time for the first ever all-women's pay-per-view Evolution, and she ended up teaming up with Bayley and Natalya to face the Riot Squad in a 6-women tag team match at the historic event. Now, Now, I am very surprised, and don't get me wrong, all the girls there worked their butts off to make this match more special, not like the random women's tag team matches we get on Raw. This match was really pay-per-view quality, but it's just so ludicrous to me to see such a couple big names like Bayley and Sasha involved in this random tag team match at the historic pay-per-view, considering that the rivalry was basically the Riot Squad against Natalya. The build of Bayley and Sasha in this storyline was basically non-existent, so I mean, they put on a banger, but it is still a down that they didn't get an important spot match or storyline in this very special event for women's wrestling. And after that, she got a very forgettable participation at Survivor Series. That's how 2018 ended for Sasha. I mean, we started so great, but the ending was just not the greatest. I mean, what can we say? Honestly, Sasha Banks in 2018 was such a great year for her, to be honest. She was part of so many first evers, but my problem is she nearly always lost. That's the only problem that I have. She's always part of these big and huge moments just to elevate someone else, just like it happened with Charlotte and Alexa while they were feuding for the Raw Women's Championship. At this point, I am not surprised anymore, but it still bugs me. It bugs me a little bit. And 2018, even though it was a better year than 2017 for Sasha, it's still not at the level of their NXT run. So far, the Raw run that she's having is not one of the best, honestly. Now we move to 2019, and this is a very controversial year for Sasha. She began the year at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view challenging Ronda Rousey for the Raw Women's Championship, in my opinion giving Ronda the best match that she had as Raw Women's Champion, and obviously not winning the title and even suffering a separated shoulder in the match. However, the match quality was fantastic. And even though she was injured, she somehow managed to qualify alongside Bayley for the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view to crown the inaugural Women's Tag Team Champions. So we move from a singles title match banger to a tag team title match banger. The Elimination Chamber match between these 6 teams is flawless and it is very underrated. So many people ignore this one when they talk about Elimination Chamber matches, but it is up there with the best of them. Honestly, I mean, it is so good. It had so many great spots, innovative spots. All of the girls there had time to shine one more time. The match was over 20 minutes, and at the end, we would have Sasha Banks with a unique bank statement, making Sonya Deville tap out for her and Bayley, the Boston Hug connection, to become the first ever women's tag team champions. It was such a sweet moment. It felt like a success story because Sasha and Bayley were fighting backstage for months to get WWE to introduce women's tag team championships in the company, and when they finally did and they were the first ones chosen to wear the titles around their waist, it felt like a big victory not only for them but for all women's wrestling. They managed to defend their titles at the next pay-per-view, which was Fastlane against the Samoan Slaughterhouse, Tamina and Nia Jax, and then that's when the controversy and the drama started, as the next title defense that they had happened at WrestleMania, the grandest stage of them all, in a fatal 4-way tag team match when they faced the Samoan Slaughterhouse, the Iconics, and Divas of Doom with the returning Beth Phoenix. The legend inside the match made it even more special, and it was the first time the tag titles were defended at WrestleMania, so everything felt magic. But there were some small problems that happened backstage allegedly, and it was that Sasha and Bayley were told just a minute before they went on stage that they would be losing the tag team titles at WrestleMania to the Iconics, and it started a lot of drama behind the scenes. After the Iconics' victory at the stage of the Immortals, the Boston Hug Connection title reign ended at 49 days, and there were so many different reports that they threw a tantrum, and Sasha Banks actually left for 4 months after this drama. Oh my god, another hiatus. I am starting to lose my mind with this hiatus. But this time around it was even more serious than before, because first of all, Sasha was suffering from depression, and due to depression she even asked for her release back then. It is so crazy that we could have lost Sasha Banks in 2019. After all the controversy and no word from Sasha or WWE, after 4 months she returned in August with a new look. Now she was the blueprint, destroying Natalya and the Raw Women's Champion at the time, Becky Lynch, with steel chairs, establishing herself as the biggest heel in the Raw Women's division. This has to be my favorite Sasha Banks era era, it had all the potential for Sasha to become the face of the Raw Women's division. She restarted her alliance with Bayley, this time as heels, and that shocking segment where Bayley destroyed Becky Lynch with a chair, and obviously reignited her feud from NXT with the Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch. Everything was going flawlessly, and it looked like WWE was going to make up for all the mistakes they've made with Sasha's career in the past couple years. And once again, obviously, I was wrong. They had two top-notch matches, obviously for the Raw Women's Championship. The first one happened at the Clash of Champions pay-per-view, a hell of a match, super physical, but it ended up in disqualification. And the second one in another very memorable Hell in a Cell match. The second time ever women step in, and the second time ever Sasha Banks is involved. This has to be probably the most creative Hell in a Cell match when it comes to spots, and I think it was another missed opportunity to give Becky the victory instead of Sasha. This was the moment where a lot of people wanted Sasha to win the title again, and you could see in the crowd's faces after Becky Lynch won. Half of them actually wanted Sasha to win. Becky already had a long title reign with the Raw title, so why the hell couldn't they give Sasha the opportunity to win it? She looked so devastated after the match, honestly. She was crying, not sure if it was legit or what happened, but I would be crying. I mean, I've been mistreated again. I am the top player that could never get the job done. And that's how I would sum up Sasha Banks' WWE career. But okay, let's continue. I'm getting a little heated, sorry about that. Later that month in October, she would be drafted to Smackdown, and that's how Sasha Banks' tenure in Raw would finally end, after many years. And I would say her Raw run was average. She had so many great moments, but all of them were short-lived. She was part of so many first ever and historic moments, losing mostly all of them. So I guess it was average because she got the exposure that she deserved, but at the same time, she didn't really get the recognition of the respect that she had earned with the performances she had been giving us night in and night out. But I mean, life can't be perfect. I still prefer her NXT run to her Raw run, and she was stuck in Raw for about 3 years. So I mean, we're going down slowly, but we're still going down, 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 lower and lower. Sasha Banks made her debut on SmackDown with a new theme song, Sky's the Limit remix, which fit her heel persona even better than the original version. Queen of outfits, queen of theme songs, what else can you ask for? In SmackDown, she became Bayley's sidekick. Bayley was the SmackDown Women's Champion at the time, forming the Golden Role Models. And her first relevant thing as part of the SmackDown brand was becoming the team captain for the Survivor Series 5-on-5-on-5 traditional elimination match. And it was such a great match, the best Survivor Series elimination women's match we had up to this point. Sasha always being in the best time ever matches. She was one of the final two, and she had so many great spots with the likes of Bianca Belair, Toni Storm, Rhea Ripley, but unfortunately she would be the last person eliminated by the team captain of NXT, Rhea Ripley, and would lose the match for her brand. At least she got a great showing. She wrestled a couple more weeks and then she would go MIA without anybody really giving us any information. This is becoming a regular thing, and she even missed the Royal Rumble pay-per-view and the Royal Rumble match. Nobody even mentioned her, like she didn't exist. At least she returned in time for Wrestlemania, and the match that was settled for the SmackDown Women's Championship this time was a fatal 5-way match between Bayley, the defending champion, Tamina, Naomi, Lacey Evans, and the boss, Sasha Banks. Sasha was eliminated by Lacey, no shocker, I mean, we're talking about the Wrestlemania losing streak continuing, and they were teasing one more time by the end of the match that Sasha wanted Bayley's title for herself. And that lasted a couple seconds because she then wrapped the title around Bayley's waist and they both celebrated, so nothing happened. They kept teasing the possible breakup and Sasha's betrayal for months until they stopped at June 5th because Sasha and Bayley defeated Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross in an episode of SmackDown to regain the Women's Tag Team Championships, winning the belts for the second time in their career. That was nice, and this has to be one of the most entertaining and well-prepared runs from the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships history. The title reign only lasted 85 days, but they had 5 title defenses across the 3 different brands. That was madness. I mean, honestly, the titles have been used as props and they were meaningless, and out of nowhere these two get the titles back and defend them everywhere. That's what I call elevating the titles, honey. They defended the titles against Bliss and Cross, the Iconics, Shotzi and Tegan, the Kabuki Warriors, and later on Team Shania. Now, while all of this was happening, in July, on Raw, Sasha Banks was seeking to become a double champion just like her best friend and was feuding with Asuka. And that's how, after a good pay-per-view match at Extreme Rules, the horror show, Sasha defeated Asuka thanks to Bayley's shenanigans to become a double champion and win the 5th Raw Women's Championship of her career. We thought that this time around she had the chance to have a real run because Bayley and Sasha were dominating the whole damn company. I thought this was boss time for real. Sasha became 2 Beltz Banks and it was all going out flawlessly, not because they had all the titles, which I mean was nice for their fans, but also because all titles were defended. None of the titles, neither the singles or tag titles, were left to the side like we have seen time and time again. Unfortunately, August arrived and it was such a dark month for Sasha Banks. In the span of 7 days, she lost both titles. First at SummerSlam 2020, where she gave a hell of a match against Asuka one more time, but this time it was not enough and she lost via submission. And then just a week later in another pay-per-view, which I never understood why there were 2 pay-per-views 2 consecutive weeks, but I mean whatever. At Payback 2020, Team Shania would defeat Sasha Banks and Bayley, the Golden Role Models, to become the new Women's Tag Team Champions. This time around, Bayley was the one who tapped out. Fantastic. We continue with the curse of no title defenses as Asuka defeated Sasha, and now she's not even a Tag Team Champion anymore, and they dropped the titles to a made-up team. Now the teases of Sasha betraying Bayley came back full force after she had no titles and Bayley was still the SmackDown Women's Champion, but shockingly, in September, Bayley would be the one destroying the hell out of Sasha Banks, betraying her after they lost the rematch for the Tag Team Championships on SmackDown against Team Shania. This was a shocker. Everybody was waiting for Sasha to turn on Bayley, and it was the other way around. And I have to give kudos to WWE for thinking about that. I would have loved to see the crowd's reaction in that moment. Unfortunately, COVID wouldn't let us enjoy the moment with the electrifying crowd. But I mean, it was still, storyline-wise, a very intelligent move. After weeks and weeks of lovely promos, different attacks, backstage segments, we finally got the decisive match at Hell in a Cell 2020. In a Hell in a Cell match, a spectacular one, my favorite one ever. Once again, Sasha being part of a Hell in a Cell match, 3rd time in a row, and that's how Sasha would finally defeat Bayley to become the SmackDown Women's Champion for the first time in her career. This has to be my favorite book-ending rivalry in a long time. I mean, we're talking about Sasha and Bayley. They do not disappoint, and this match was magical. It felt like sweet revenge for Sasha Banks, and after this victory, she also became the 3rd woman ever to become a Grand Slam champion. So far, her SmackDown run is going nicely. I mean, she began in a tag team, they were tag team champions, the alliance was gone, and now she's a singles champion. And storyline-wise, all of the things made sense, they were not random. So at least I am giving props to WWE for this storyline. It was great. Her title reign lasted 167 days. So this is groundbreaking, let's be honest. Because Sasha Banks, the rest of 2020, first defended the title against Bayley in a rematch on SmackDown. And it still delivered, like the match was so good, it still felt like a pay-per-view quality match. And then she would defend the title against the returning Carmella, the untouchable one, at the TLC pay-per-view. That match has to be a banger as well. The best encounter between Sasha and Carmella for the whole rivalry. Before continuing with her title reign, I just want to point out a couple things from 2020. First of all, Sasha won the Slammy of the Year for Superstar of the Year 2020 because 2020 was her year, and if you don't believe me, watch my video here where I talk about the best women in 2020. And also, Sasha Banks received by many different sources, including PWI Insider, Best Feud 2020 as well against Bayley. The year she dominated, and she was the only person ever in history to win all possible main roster titles for women on the same year, because she was Tag Team Champion, Raw Women's Champion, and SmackDown Women's Champion in the span of what, 4 months? So that was an amazing accomplishment. There's no way to deny that. Then she continued her title defenses at the Royal Rumble, defeating Carmella one more time. This was not as good as their TLC match, but still a pretty decent bout. And then for some reason, despite being the champion and Bianca Belair winning the Rumble and choosing Sasha to challenge her for the title at WrestleMania, Sasha and Bianca were teaming up to go against the tag team champions Team Shania. What's the reason? I don't know. What's the logic? There is none, but they're still there, and it was an awful booked feud. It was so bad, I have absolutely no idea why the hell they were teaming up together. The matches weren't that memorable either. There were no huge spots, there was no nothing. This was just a waste of time for everyone involved. However, at least Sasha defended the SmackDown Women's Championship against Nia Jax at SmackDown, and then we finally got the highly anticipated one-on-one match between Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks at the grandest stage of them all, WrestleMania. Now, very important, after losing the tag team title match at Fastlane, Sasha slapped Bianca Belair, turning heel. And heel Banks is what's best for business. Epic WrestleMania main event, the first time two black African American women main event, the grandest stage of them all, the SmackDown Women's Championship on the line. It was a top-notch match. It was, for me, a 5-star match caliber. I don't think it received the 5 stars, but it should have, and it won an SP as well. Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair tore the house down. There were so many great spots. In the end, it would be the EST who would win the SmackDown Women's Championship for the first time in her career, and Sasha Banks would continue her WrestleMania losing streak. However, she looked very proud of what the two of them accomplished, and she has all right to be. Sasha and Bianca delivered one for the ages as well. And I am super happy, once again, that Sasha keeps making history despite losing most of the historic matches. After losing, another 3-month hiatus happened, and I am so tired of this 3-month hiatus, 2-month hiatus, but it is what it is. And Sasha will return as a babyface, saving Bianca Belair from Queen Selena and Carmella, setting a tag team match which they won in Sasha's return match essentially, and then after winning, Sasha would turn heel immediately. It was short-lived, the babyface run, attacking Bianca and stating that she wanted her rematch at SummerSlam. And at SummerSlam, I don't know what happened either. Sasha didn't show up. WWE kept advertising the match until the moment Bianca was already in the ring, just to tell us that Sasha wouldn't come out, and that was disrespectful for everyone. Nobody never mentioned what happened in real life with Sasha Banks that day, but she just never appeared. And we really deserve a pay-per-view rematch between these two queens, and we didn't get it. Sasha will be MIA for a couple of weeks, and then she will return at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view 2021, attacking Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch, and whistling herself in the SmackDown Women's Championship feud, which set a triple threat match at Crown Jewel for the SmackDown Women's Championship. An awesome bout. It is so groundbreaking to see women at Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia wrestling in a way that they did. This was a long ass match. It was so well done. All of them once again slayed, and I feel like Sasha Banks is involved. That already makes the match fantastic despite what the haters say, but this one felt so special. Unsurprisingly again, by the end of the match, Becky rolled up Sasha Banks and hold the rope just to get a 3 count, and Sasha Banks, after being cheated on of this SmackDown Women's Championship match, would turn babyface for no reason. Nothing really interesting happened the last trimester of 2021 in Sasha's career. Such a bittersweet year, because we have so many great moments, but at the same time we have so many letdowns as well. It still gave us some great things, so it is not that bad. Then bad news come around when Sasha Banks would get injured in a live show against Charlotte, and then WWE posted a statement she would be out from 6 to 8 weeks. That meant Sasha would have to miss the Royal Rumble match. And I was like, damn, another Royal Rumble match without Sasha. Fortunately, Sasha returned to SmackDown prior to Royal Rumble, attacking the SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair, who was involved in the match for some reason, and making official that she would be an entry in the match. Sasha Banks was the first entry of the 2022 Women's Royal Rumble match. The only time that she participated was in 2018, and she was the first entry as well. Once again, Sasha had a good showing. Great outfit, the Sailor Moon realness was there present, and she had great interactions with legends as well, the likes of Melina and Kelly Kelly. Unfortunately, for some booking decision that I would never understand, Sasha was eliminated quite early in the match by Queen Zelina for absolutely no reason because they had no feud, they were in different brands. Sasha was one of the favorites to win again. This has to be another down because everybody was sure that Sasha would challenge Charlotte at WrestleMania for the Smackdown Women's Championship. It looked like they were starting a rivalry there, but the early elimination made everybody just lose their cool. And it was later reported, and I talked about that in the Cancel Storylines video over here, that Sasha was scheduled to face Charlotte at WrestleMania, but due to Ronda Rousey's return, the plans were scrapped. That meant that there were absolutely no plans for the boss on the road to WrestleMania, and that's how she was randomly paired up with Naomi, her former Team Bad partner, and they were going to seek and chase the Women's Tag Team Championships. I mean, at least it's better than nothing. At WrestleMania 38, Sasha alongside Naomi participated in a Fatal 4-Way Tag Team Championship match, which also featured Natalya and Shayna Baszler, Liv for Brutality, Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley, and the champions at the time, Queen Zelina and Carmella. And I was very worried because Sasha and Naomi were winning absolutely everything on the road to WrestleMania, and that usually means that you're not getting the title at the pay-per-view, but this time around they did, with an awesome tag team finisher, putting the tag team division back on the map, and they were focused and determined to make the tag team division relevant in WWE, because it's been lacking relevance for a while now. They did improve the tag team division for a bit, and they managed to defend the title twice, first on Raw against Liv for Brutality, and then on SmackDown against Shayna Baszler and Natalya. However, May would come, and this is when everything went straight into the trash. In one episode of Raw in May, it was reported that both Sasha and Naomi, due to creative differences, have left the building during the episode of Raw where they were scheduled to participate in a six-pack challenge in the main event of the show. And that was very surprising because WWE usually never airs up the dirt sheets, but this time around they decided to do it. After that, on SmackDown that same week, it was reported that Sasha and Naomi were both suspended indefinitely and they would be stripped of the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships, ending their title reign at 47 days. Such an anticlimactic and very disappointing way to end a Tag Team Championship reign that actually had expectations to be one of the best in a while. But at this point, with 10 years in Sasha Banks' career, should we be surprised? I won't really go in deep into this suspension drama because I already made a video about it and it will be over here in case you want to check it out. But it is just so sad to think that one of the biggest names in the women's evolution, like Sasha Banks, could end her career in WWE this way. We're still not sure, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if Sasha Banks is officially released by WWE or not, but I mean, there are so many rumors and so many reports that maybe they don't want to make it official yet, but it is true, Sasha is gone. The way WWE handled all of this is definitely the biggest down of this video, and this is how we will close the video, in a very upsetting way. This was definitely the rise and fall of Sasha Banks in WWE. Alright, so this was the rise and fall of the boss, the standard, the blueprint, Sasha Banks. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think about Sasha Banks' career? What are your favorite moments and your least favorite moments? What were the ups and the downs in your opinion? And I really hope that you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Sasha Banks, as you probably can see, is one of my favorite wrestlers, if not my current favorite wrestler, and I am so upset to see that things have gone down this way. But there's nothing we can do, and we just have to wait and see if the release is official or not. Thank you once again for your support. My name is Alexis, as you already know. Also, leave me in the comments what other superstar would you like to see a rise and fall video of. That would help me a lot because the creativity is really struggling lately. My name is Alexis, as you already know. Here is my Instagram if you want to contact me or anything, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.